Well, let me just say a very warm welcome to you, Colonel Janet Munn. How are you?
Thank you. I'm well, Commissioner Rosalie. Thank you for the
That's good.
good to be here.
Well, I just want to say to you that you are the first of our Cell Army women interviews that we're doing a series of these, and you are the first guest. And we are thrilled to have you, Jenna. Thank you for lending your voice to us today and your experience so that we are able to focus on women in leadership and we're able to talk to each other about where we are, what we think, and how we feel about women in leadership in these days. So thank you. So let me just say this to you, Janet. We want to know simply who you are. We are hoping that those who are with us today and who are going to listen to us today, there's some may not know who you are. So would you tell us who you are, your personality, a little bit about your calling, a little bit about background, so we get to know who Janet Munn is?
Oh, thank you. Well, I appreciate the invitation and your leadership in this, Commissioner Rosalie, in terms of women in leadership. I care deeply about it. So thank you for this privilege to participate. My name is Janet Munn. I'm from the Northeast of the United States, been an officer for over 30 years. My personality, I'm actually more of an observer, not a spectator, but I prefer to observe and watch and think. I'm not overly impulsive of jumping into things, to speaking up quickly.
Mhm.
I tend to reflect and consider before I act and talk. So I'm a little bit shy, but I'm very intense. I care deeply about things, and once convinced, I take action. So my whole life I care about justice for women and girls, especially justice in general, but especially for women and girls. I love dance and beauty and art. I'm not a great artist myself, but those things are very nourishing for me, as is the ocean and nature, things like that. So I'm grateful to be part of this call and this time, really, in world history and in the kingdom, right, through the Army.
Yeah, well, you certainly are a person of action, and that's why we have you here with us today. Now, you are right now, presently, your appointment with the Salvation Army. You are the director of the International Social Justice Commission in New York, and that's where you are stationed and where you are based. And this is part of international headquarters. You are part of international headquarters. You are working hard to seek and promote justice for our global Salvation Army, to make us aware of situations around the world for the global Salvation Army. You do this with advocacy, research, education. That's all part of your work there at ISJC. And you keep reminding us, the Salvation Army, of our justice-focused calling that we have internationally. Based on the life and teaching of Jesus Christ. I mean, that's where you are and what you do for us. So but tell us specifically what you do, because you do have a team. But what is it that you do, and what does that really mean for us to understand?
Yes, I think it's important to understand that social justice flows from the heart of God. It's not a secular idea or a society's idea, but God's throne. God's throne is righteousness and justice. Jesus established a kingdom on principles of justice. And so that's so much part of anyone who calls on the name of Christ, and within that, the Salvation Army, and within that,
Yes.
the International Social Justice Commission. It just makes sense in terms of integrity of who we are as people and as followers of Christ. I work at the International Social Justice Commission here in New York, but global in scope for the Salvation Army. And again, the vision of this is based on the life teaching example of Jesus Christ, who reveals God to us. And we want to amplify the voices of marginalized, oppressed people so that their stories, their experiences are valued, and that then these things then translate into real life policies and practices and opportunities. And so in recent months, past couple of years when I've been in this role, we have established what we call the Cry for Justice, a global call to prayer for women and girls. And then that was
Yes.
now 2021. It's a 21st century moral and social justice issues. So we're thinking about raising awareness of injustices in the world that people are suffering. And it's the poor, the marginalized who suffer the greatest. And again, my particular focus has been women and girls, although not exclusively so.
Yeah.
Raise awareness of both the problems, the injustices that are so present in the world, to have Salvationists and others have a clearer picture of the bigger world, both its sufferings, its problems, its injustices, and the redemptive engagement. There are so many Salvationists and others around the world who are responding compassionately and creatively to injustices. And so we want to raise awareness about those things as well. And also then inspire and equip people, Salvationists in particular, to respond personally, to engage in the struggle for justice, in seeking justice together, along with the International Social Justice Commission, just part of a larger story.
Yeah, and you're certainly doing that for us as the International Salvation Army. You're our voice at the United Nations, and you do everything to help us to be totally aware of the world itself, not just one spot, but certainly the global world. Good. And you talked about injustice. That's what I kind of wanted to focus a little bit on, especially for women and girls. And I know that your picture is certainly much bigger than that, but I kind of wanted to speak to you about that this afternoon as we share together. And you just mentioned it, and the whole fact of the 2020 Cry for Justice, and we were all a part of that, and that was absolutely wonderful. Your research and education and how the United Nations Development Goals impacts the women and girls around the world, and they're very key and very prominent in our thinking when we talk about injustice. Also, the fact that you are providing brilliant resources to the International Army when it comes to days of celebration. You've had a great day, International Day of Celebration for Women and Girls, and we were a part of that. Our women's department here, women's ministry department here, we were part of that. It was excellent. It was absolutely wonderful to hear their voices. So gender justice for us and for you is certainly a very high priority. So, but tell us, what does gender justice mean, and how can we, the church, and how can we, the Salvation Army, help with that in these days, particularly right now, even with this COVID-19, we can't ever stop not being aware of injustice. So can you just give us a little thought on that this afternoon?
Yes, I do want to mention, as you've indicated, that on our website, the ISJC website, there is really a library of helpful resources.
Yes.
If anyone who watches this is further interested, the whole Cry for Justice year is there. So it has information about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how they intersect with women and girls globally, as well as some biblical perspective and ways that Salvationists are responding, again, compassionately and creatively by way of redemptive engagement. And then ways that any one of us can then participate as well. And then we pray together. So that's all there on our website. And also there's even the United Nations has recognized that the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, that women and girls suffer more so around the world. Every single one of those Sustainable Development Goals. The UN has a whole section dedicated to this, the fact that women and girls intersect with Sustainable Development Goals and suffer more than the general population, than men do. So that's worth paying attention to and acknowledging. Sometimes our own experience, we can be, gender justice, I'm treated well, my spouse is kind to me, I have a meaningful job, good. But globally, and we're not disengaged from the plight of those who suffer globally, rather we're responsible, and we recognize that we're able to respond. So globally, in terms of gender justice, we want to be aware, for example, that there's a thing called gendercide, where millions, tens of millions of female fetuses have been aborted in the womb because of the devaluing of females globally. Part of the reason females are devalued is because the social exclusion in so many nations, well, in every nation to greater or lesser degree, excluded from economic opportunity and contribution. So if there are poor families and they can only have one child, they don't want that to be a female because females can't earn as much money, not because we're less capable,
Yes.
but because we've been excluded from economic opportunities. Girls have less access to education globally, suffer more violence and exploitation, are more likely to be sexually abused than males,
Yes.
do 3 times more unpaid work than males, and on it goes. Whereas when we bring in gender justice, so that there's equal respect and opportunities for everyone, regardless of gender, all of society flourishes, all of society is elevated. And the countries where
Yes.
are most marginalized are the ones with a lower sort of quality of life, whereas the countries that actually prioritize this have a higher quality of life and a higher level of even happiness, according to its own citizens. So we all flourish
Yes.
when women and girls are given equal opportunity and respect, just regardless of their gender. It's important to recognize that this does not in any way disadvantage males or men. Actually, when women experience gender justice, equal respect and opportunity, the whole society flourishes. There's less poverty,
Yes.
less child mortality, more education, less crime. All of society flourishes when women and girls are. It's when nations prioritize gender justice on behalf of women and girls.
Yes. Yes. Thanks for that. Let's talk about the 2021 International Women's Day, because it's coming up in March, and the weeks go by so fast. It's coming up, and the theme this year is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in COVID-19 World. Oh, how powerful is that, and so relevant to where we find ourselves today. Just to tell us, why is there a need to celebrate women leaders as opposed to leaders more broadly? And what does investing in women really matter? Why is it we want to do this? What is our passion about that? And where do you see that happening? And how can we be better at it? Yes, it's very big. Yes.
It matters that we celebrate women as leaders because it's been recognized, and this is shockingly universal, that there is a gender bias with regard to what leadership looks like, even like both men and women. Women also tend to prefer, like if you show pictures, who would be the leader, who's the doctor, who's the pilot, who's the preacher, who's the politician, who's the government, who's the president, who's the prime minister. Show photographs of options. There's just this bias that's pervasive that it would be a male, and some racial issues, even that be a white male. And this is true even from people of color. There's a bias, at least a slight bias, that leadership looks like men, and in certain contexts, white men. That they would be knowledgeable and capable in disproportionate ways to the rest of humanity, which of course this is not true, but it's because that's what we've all been seeing for so long. So in terms of women leaders, it underscores the truth that representation matters. That when someone who doesn't fit the white male, this is what leadership looks like type, sees someone that looks like them, they say, oh, okay, so I could be a preacher, so I could be a prime minister, so I could be a doctor. It just opens up the possibilities, and it's not just for like young girls imprinting.
No.
Well, that's very important to be able to imagine the possibility of what women and girls could accomplish. That's very important. But also it works against the gender bias for all of us, so that then males also, would not be as biased in terms of what a leader looks like. And so they say, oh, of course, this doctor, my doctor is, and then people go, he, but it's not necessarily so. But when we can celebrate women leaders, then we all have different examples of what leadership can look like. Everyone can imagine a different future.
Yes.
A couple of resources that have done great research on this. One was a few years ago called Half the Sky, a New York Times bestseller from a Chinese proverb that talked about women hold up half the sky. So they did all this research on the effect on societies of empowerment of women. And then just within the past year, Melinda Gates from the Gates Foundation.
Yes. Yes.
The moment of lift, how empowering women changes the world. Very similar to Half the Sky, but more recent research, in which it just demonstrated that everyone benefits, societies flourish when women are empowered. Hence, it's so important to celebrate women leadership, women in leadership. Children are healthier, better educated, reduction of poverty, less illness, more economic strength.
Yes. Yeah. It's great. That's great words that you're saying. And I'm listening very closely to you because I have read Half Sky. It was a great book. And I would recommend it as well for anybody to take it and read it. And you mentioned Melinda Gates' book called The Moment of Lift, How Empowering Women Changes the World. You recommended that to me a few weeks ago. It's certainly a great book. And I think that these are kind of books that kind of really give us passion for continuing to do what we're doing, and for you in the terms of empowering women and young girls and being good role models for that. I want to give you a quote from the book. You'll be familiar with it because I know that you've read the book as well. But she wrote this: "More than at any time in the past, we have the knowledge and energy and moral insight to crack the patterns of history. We need the help of every advocate now, women and men. No one should be left out. Everyone should be brought in. Our call is to lift women up. And when we come together in this cause, we are the lift." Now, I love that. We are the lift. For you, for your own experience, Janet, can you share a time when you have seen or felt this lift that Melinda is talking about, describing for yourself? Can you think of a time when you felt that you've been the lift?
Yes, a great question. And I love that quote regarding the moment of lift.
Yeah.
She relates, of course, to an airplane taking off, that you're on the runway going fast.
Absolutely.
Moment where things lift off. And so there's a lot of work on the ground happening towards gender equality, but we haven't quite lifted off yet. Sorry to say there aren't a lot of times where I would say I have either experienced it myself, that sense of lift, reaching my full potential, fully released in terms of other people's support or influence, but there are some. I have in recent years, most of the last decade, worked in the college setting as leader there, principal of colleges, and was able to be part of a team and forming teams where there was actual gender equality among the student body. Each class or session had a gender balance. Students were given equal opportunity and equal voice, and we had to select like an outstanding communicator, preacher, speaker, and for several years, it was a female student who was selected. It was not, men are better at this, but we actually had the sense of really seeing people for who they were and honoring their gifts in an equal, a fair way. Around like a board table in those settings, and everyone's voice was listened to. We didn't allow for interruption, which there's also a lot of social science research demonstrating, and most of our listeners will have experienced this, where women are interrupted and their ideas sort of taken and said again by a male and given honor and so on. But we, in those board meeting settings, actually insisted that that did not happen, that everyone's voice was listened to. And there were men and women around the table, and it felt like the kingdom was at hand. I could see a younger generation, especially, although even some my age, who were gaining confidence in their own intellectual abilities. Several of them are in graduate programs now. And I was just so happy to be part of that community and say, you can do this. You're smart. You know what it takes. And there's that moment of lift, certainly in their academic and intellectual development. And then
Yes.
also their skills and leadership were acknowledged in that setting, not leading the way a man leads, but in their own way, that is equally
Yes.
as a leadership style. And so that felt to me like these women were soaring. There was a moment of lift,
Yes.
and it was an intergenerational community. So it was just a great joy to know that there were generations experiencing that and watching and learning and being impacted. And of course, when women are honored as men are honored, it's a healthier society. It's the kingdom and
Yes.
God's will being done on earth as it is in heaven. It's just better. And so again, I believe that men are happier too, but that's sort of another subject.
Yeah, and it's true though. The environment around us, the people around us, when people are lifted, it seems like everybody feels this within their own being. I've been there. I watched it happen, and you just come out of that room so empowered, like you feel like you can accomplish anything now because you have been able to lift how you feel and your own capabilities and capacities, and you feel valued. You feel whole, and you feel important to what you are doing. And yeah, it's great. It's great reading, great understanding, great to apply it to the way we want to lead in these days.
Just recognizing that from the very beginning of the Bible, when we have the descriptions there of God creating all things, and when God created humanity, male and female, it was in that context that God gave authority, responsibility for the rest of creation. It was male and female together in God's image, co-laboring with responsibility and pleasure in relation to the rest of creation. That's plan A, or the design, I would say.
And for me in these days, what I try to accomplish or try to do when it comes to the women I lead and lifting them is, it's not for me, it's for those coming behind me. I want to make the way so much easier for them. So, they have such freedoms. They're able to do great things because they believe in who they are and what God is calling them to do.
I just want to thank you for that. I honor you for that. I very much appreciate, and I know, I believe you, I can see it, that you genuinely desire to help provide that moment of lift for women
Yes.
coming after us by a few years. And so thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Well, we're in this together, right? We're in this together, and we can work together. And the influence and impact we have on the next generation, it's on my heart. I want to be good at that. So let me just ask this question to you. So you are in a position of leadership, and this is 2021 now. What do you see around you? As you think about that, of being a woman in a position of leadership, first of all, just the broad picture. We'll talk about in the Army afterwards, in the Salvation Army. But what do you see around you in 2021?
I see sort of extremes, I think. There's certainly, misogyny is the term, meaning hatred of women, hatred of the females. So that's certainly present. And
yes,
I won't go down that, dark place right now, but we touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of some of the injustices that hurt women. So I see that. I don't want to imply that I don't or that we don't, but I also see a generation of gifted and capable women who are ready for leadership in every sphere of society. And I think this is God's grace at work, sort of prevenient grace, God's grace working widely.
Yes.
But there's a generation who are less willing, less tolerant to be excluded or to be marginalized, and who have a deep love for Christ, and flowing from that, a passion for justice, because they can't be separated.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yes.
I think there's a clarity about that in what I'm seeing today in women.
Yes.
Who are eager to learn and able to lead. And
yes.
I also see a generation of young men concurrently.
Yes.
Who assume that women have every gift and capacity needed, and who therefore, of course, should lead these women. This is my what I see of some younger men.
Yes.
Opportune time for men and women to genuinely co-labor, like Eden restored. For example, I've had a very impassioned conversation with a young man and a young woman a few years ago, and the young woman, was questioning her own right to lead, her own talent, intelligence, gifting, calling, all that. And it was a young man at the table who argued persuasively, passionately, compellingly, just the things I'm saying, that she had every bit as much talent and right and capacity to lead. And he really made the point very strongly. And it was very moving for me to hear that from a young man. And he's not the only, there's a generation.
Yes. Yeah. And I agree with you. I love the younger generation. I watch them, and they do life differently, but they do it together. And there's no this is a man's thing or a woman's thing. They just do it together and make life count and enjoy fulfillment and happiness. And I envy them sometimes. I do envy them. What about the Salvation Army, Janet? As you see this moving to 2021, at the end of our 21st century, what do you see the Salvation Army developing into, or how do you see that happening when it comes to this women leadership?
Yeah, the Salvation Army has such wonderful DNA, if you will, on this issue that was, I think, I don't want to exaggerate it, but I'm not sure we could exaggerate it. I greatly value the pioneering, nonconformist history of the Salvation Army in relation to gender roles. Our founders and early Salvationists did more to release women to lead, and young women, we're talking teenagers, to
very young women,
and to create. The early day army did more to release young women to lead and preach than had ever been seen before, or perhaps even since. And it was remarkable. I love that. That's our best self. That's our DNA. That's who we are. Even today, by percentage, we're not a huge denomination, if you will, compared to other Christian expressions. But by percentage, the Salvation Army ordains, commissions, releases, empowers to leadership as officers more females than any other denomination. 50% of our ordained leaders are female. That is a beautiful testimony, and I love that about us. There is certainly room for growth in relation to gender equity, acknowledging that women have not had equal opportunities to develop or to lead, and therefore there must be a responsible intentionality to develop women to ensure that they are included in leadership opportunities at an equal as men are, and maybe even making up for lost time at a higher rate than men are for a period of time, to bring out something closer to equality. But equity acknowledges that there's been disadvantage to females, and we have some work to do. And I recognize that both you and your husband are well aware of that and eager to do what you do these days.
And what I love is that you and I are in the positions where we can help make some of this happen. And we need to keep fighting and working and praying as we move forward as an International Salvation Army to open doors and make things happen so that we are better for the kingdom's sake as we move forward into the future. But so thank you for where you are and what you're helping us with these days to see some of this move forward. So just a couple more questions and then we'll conclude this interview. But thank you for your time, your patience, and for your willingness to be with us today. When I want to talk to you about yourself personally, in the sense of how are you challenging yourself to raise up other women? You've mentioned that several times in different ways, but just what are you doing and how are you challenge yourself to raise up women? And how do you find new and effective ways to invest in women in the appointment that you are today, where you are at ISJC?
Yes, great question. I love this.
Yes.
I felt very clearly about 10 years ago, the Lord communicate to me that my view, my paradigm, my worldview, my priorities were not just about me right now, but they were very much about the daughters, as it were, coming out.
Yes.
So it was happening gradually, but there was a moment where the Lord really communicated that to me very clearly, and I haven't looked back by the grace of God. So, but even before that, I've just always been discipling or mentoring or coaching younger women one-on-one, recognizing or also gathering in small groups, trying to affirm the capacities, the talents of other younger women, and affirm my peers as well. You can do this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, as I have influence, as I mentioned, that college setting, those college settings, to be able to encourage or provide opportunities, open doors of opportunity for women's further development, either in their education or in their skill development or in their actual leadership opportunities. So I try to be alert to some inequities there and speak up on behalf of those things, and to even name the talents in women that sometimes
Yes.
are not recognized. Again, because we all have actually a gender bias about this. And so we don't see
Mm-hmm.
the way leadership looks in people who are not like the dominant group. So I've just been investing in women, again, one-on-one in small groups, and as I have influence organizationally, to open doors of opportunity and to affirm the giftedness among us in women. In my current situation, it's amazing. The opportunities are remarkable. We have an intern program here at the International Social Justice Commission.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes. Yes. Very effective.
yeah, that I've been here. And also, COVID notwithstanding, we've had an officer capacity building program. The preponderance of those groups, both in terms of interns and officer development, have been females. Again, that we haven't controlled.
Yes.
That's just who's applied or who territories have recommended. So those have been great opportunities for me to meet with them, to encourage them, to mentor and coach them, disciple them. And then also several members of our staff um, are female and mostly younger than I am. So I revel, I glory in their talent, in their intelligence, and their contribution. I marvel.
Yes.
Yeah. So I tell them so, you know, I kind of name it. And then of course, in the work itself, raising awareness about gender inequities and the
Yes.
suffering of women and girls I have a platform to do that.
Yes.
Face honestly how bad it is, to honor people who are responding creatively and compassionately, and then providing opportunities for people to address some of those inequities, just to empower women. And with COVID and going online so much, as with everyone, a lot of or more of our ministry
Yes.
is online. And so it's been a delight to be able to bring in, we call them informally, social justice champions. And so many of them are females. So to give them voice to speak from the ISJC platform about the work that they're doing. Yeah. And then we're also part of the United Nations. And as you mentioned, the International Day of the Girl, International Women's Day.
Yes.
And we're right there in those conversations.
Yes.
And also from the International Social Justice Commission, the international response to modern slavery and human trafficking happens. And so
Yes.
part of that as well, which again, disproportionately injures women and girls. And
Yes.
it's from the micro to discipling an intern to the macro of the response to modern slavery and human trafficking, and several sort of layers in between. But raising awareness,
Yes.
redemptive engagement, creative, compassionate response. And then also throughout the global call to prayer, the cry for justice last year,
Yes.
this year,
Yes.
the first century, it's permeated with prayer. That
Yes.
praying, we cry out. That's why it's called the cry for justice.
Yes. Yes.
Where Jesus described the persistent widow and gave her as an example of how we should pray. in the face of overwhelming injustice, with being greatly disempowered. Of course, a widow in first century Palestine, her likelihood of receiving justice was really remote. And he said, that's the way you should approach these things. Always pray and never give up. And so we encourage one another with these words.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you. Your words are so encouraging for us this afternoon. Just to mention to you that you're very familiar with the reimagining of the women's ministries that we are doing internationally, and we have this new vision statement that is really capturing our hearts, and we move very much into, again, the women and the young girls. And this is where you and I hold hands together and support each other and cheer each other on, and make things happen from where we are sitting. But the vision statement, one of the lines say this: women who are empowered by the gospel and equipped to fulfill their potential through lifelong learning and development. And we talk, and I talk to you often about the fact that I want to see us moving. Again, it's the goals, the sustainable development goals about education that we want to look at, poverty, so many things that we can work together on. And I just want to say to you that thank you for what you are doing in your world, in your part of the world, in your ministry for empowering women. You and me, we can make things happen as we join our forces together, and as we look around the world and see the great needs of the women and girls. So I'm grateful for all that you are doing, and looking at the world through your eyes is so helpful for me even today as I chat with you. Just a final question to you. If you were given the opportunity to start your journey over again, is there any word of advice you would offer to your younger self? As you reflect back on your years, what are the words, a word of advice that you would offer to your younger self, and certainly to a young woman today?
Yes, I would say to myself, my younger self, and I do say to younger women often, develop yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
Improve your skills, step out of your comfort zone. This is not to blame systemic sexism on women. No, it's much more complicated. Yeah. Individual choice, and that applies to racism, etc. But nonetheless, we want to do what we can to be our best selves, to bring everything God has deposited in us into the world for His glory, for the world's blessing and our own joy. So I would definitely say women tend to put our own needs last and always be caring for others. And this is part of the beauty of the image of God in females. So I'm not dishonoring that. But I think sometimes it's to our own detriment, which does not honor God either. So I would say, even to younger women, there are seasons. For example, if you're a mother, there are seasons that are more time intensive than other seasons. But I would just say, develop yourself, look for opportunities, don't shy away, but step up, and just improve your own skills, and then never give up.
Yes, absolutely.
There was a significant social justice breakthrough in my life a few years ago. I won't be too specific about it, but many would be aware. And so as a celebration of that, my own kids realized that I'd been advocating for this change, this justice piece, this setting wrong things right for a long time, for years. And so when the thing shifted and a wrong thing was set right, my kids gave me a mug with a quote on it from Winston Churchill, who famously said, never give up, right? So they gave me that mug as a gift on my birthday to celebrate this breakthrough for justice for women that had been a long time coming. And so like that, of course, with the Luke 18 persistent widow teaching from Jesus of always pray and never give up. So I would also say that, please to the younger women, to my younger self, anyone who's listening, don't give up. Don't give up. There's more God has for you and through you, and
Yes.
need you. So just not to get discouraged. Who wants women to give up in our growth, in our contribution, in our faith? It's not God, right? So just I want to encourage my younger self and the younger women. Develop your, recognize the seasons and never give up.
That is great wisdom, absolutely great wisdom. And thank you so much for saying that. My heart is celebrating because I am with you on those things. So thank you for saying that to our audience who will be listening to us. Great words. And I believe that your passion for that and the way you go about living your life and your leadership is every evidence that you are doing it for yourself as you're doing for those who you influence and impact each day. So thank you so much. Thank you. Our time is up. It's been great talking with you this afternoon, morning for you in New York. Thank you for taking the time. I know how busy your life is, how busy your ministry is, and I'm grateful for having you here today, for what you said. My prayer for all of those who will be listening or will listen to this interview, that they will find words to encourage them. They will find nuggets of gold that will help them in their leadership. They will listen closely to and be aware of the needs in our world with women and young girls, even around where they're living. Not only just places they can't be, but around where they are living. They'll understand how important it is to have this empowerment and to speak into the lives of the young women and girls around them. So I just want to say thank you. And may what you say be so blessed by God that somebody will hear these words and it will so impact their journey that, and I like these words, they will have this outrageous courage to keep on doing what they're doing and even be better equipped to be used by God in these days, in this world right now where God needs them the most. So thank you, dear. Really good talking with you. Have a good rest of the day, and the Lord be with you. And my prayers are with you.
And with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.